Welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to guide you through this today because we are looking at a prehistoric mystery that completely defies everything Hollywood has ever taught us about apex predators. You know the standard story, right? The dinosaurs die out and the mammals immediately take over the Earth. But what if I told you that for tens of millions of years, the most terrifying predators on the planet weren't mammals at all, but giant, psychopathic flightless birds? Think back to 66 million years ago. A rock the size of a city slams into the Earth at like 20 kilometers per second. It literally cleared the board. Every giant carnivore, every apex predator on the planet was just gone. Suddenly, the ultimate apex predator job opening had just been posted, and there were exactly 0 current applicants holding the title. Section 1, the predator job opening and the immediate asteroid aftermath. So let's look at the immediate aftermath of that strike and how multiple evolutionary lineages scrambled to claim this totally empty throne. Almost immediately after the impact wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs, the food chain collapsed from the bottom up. In what felt like an instant, 186 million years of dinosaur dominance just vanished. The world looked completely different, leaving a massive power vacuum, particularly in what would eventually become South America. Let's review the failed applicants. First up, we have Gastornis up in the north. 2 meters tall, terrifying beak, but recent chemical analysis showed it was actually a vegetarian cracking nuts. It was essentially an emu with an attitude. Okay, what about our ancestors, the mammals? Well, they survived, sure, but they were mostly the size of rats. The absolute biggest mammalian predator on the planet back then was roughly raccoon-sized. Not exactly apex material, you know? Crocodilians survived too, but they're cold-blooded ambush hunters. They can lunge, but they absolutely cannot chase prey across an open field. Finally, South America had the Phorusrhacidae, 4-legged carnivores kind of related to marsupials. They had the right body plan, but they just needed way more time to scale up. Section 2, the avian sandbox, where the birds take over. Enter the actual winner of the predator race, a lineage of flightless birds, starting with a humble 1-meter-tall species in Brazil called Paleontology. The crucial point here is how this specific combination of 3 traits allowed these early birds to absolutely dominate. First, they were warm-blooded. Unlike crocodilians, they didn't need to bake in the sun before they could move. They were ready to hunt in any weather. Second, sustained running. They had long legs perfectly built for high-speed pursuit across open ground. And third, the hooked beak. This wasn't a flat surface for crushing nuts. Oh no, it was a downward curving point designed purely for punching through flesh and cracking bone. It was, quite literally, a weapon for a mouth. 31 million. That is a massive, massive number in evolutionary history. Around 34 million years ago, the Drake Passage opened, completely severing South America from Antarctica. South America essentially became an island continent for 31 million years. That meant 31 million years of total isolation. No land bridges, no invasive mammals crossing over, just an enormous sandbox where these birds had 0 outside competition. Which brings us to Section 3, engineering the ultimate weapon, as evolution scales up. When you give a predator tens of millions of years in an isolated ecosystem, evolution doesn't just sit around, it experiments. And these birds, they scaled up into absolute biomechanical nightmares. 71 centimeters, that is the skull length of Kelenken, discovered down in Patagonia in 2006. It holds the record for the largest bird skull ever discovered, extinct or living. Just imagine a fast-running 3-meter-tall bird carrying a head the size of a crocodile's, a beak alone that measured almost half a meter long, looking exactly like a medieval war machine. Now, what's really fascinating is how evolution basically created 2 completely distinct, terrifying models to rule the ecosystem. You have the speed build, that's Kelenken, 3 meters tall, capable of running you down with surgical precision. And then you have the tank build, Brontosaurus, weighing in at up to 400 kilograms, basically the size of a polar bear. It wasn't chasing anything down because, well, it didn't need to. It was slow, massive, and entirely unstoppable. Both designs dominated because there was absolutely nothing on the continent to tell them not to. But how exactly did they kill? Well, in 2010, researchers led by Federico de Grange CT scanned the skull of a terror bird called Andal galernus and ran stress tests on it, sort of like engineers testing an airplane wing. They found the skull was incredibly strong up and down, but highly fragile side to side, so if a terror bird tried to grab and shake its prey like a dog does, its skull could break. Actually, scratch that, it would probably shatter. Instead, they used what researchers cleverly coined the Muhammad Ali strategy. hit, and retreat. They use their long necks to deliver rapid, powerful, downward hatchet strikes, driving that beak into the spine or skull of their prey with the force of a pile driver. Section 4, this saber-tooth test, the ultimate mammalian showdown. So eventually, South America reconnected with North America, leading to an ultimate evolutionary showdown. And this is where we really have to bust a very persistent myth. The standard story you'll often hear is that once the land bridge formed, superior mammalian predators like saber-toothed cats and dire wolves marched down from North America and just quickly outcompeted these primitive birds. It sounds clean, it sounds logical, and it is completely, undeniably wrong. The truth is a lot more wild. A terror bird known as Titanis didn't wait around to be invaded. Around 5 million years ago, it actually invaded North America. It walked right into an ecosystem packed with saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and bears. And it didn't get destroyed. It thrived in places like Florida and Texas for 3 million years, hunting the exact same prey right alongside the absolute best mammalian predators the North had to offer. It competed head-to-head and totally held its ground. So if mammalian fangs didn't end their dynasty, what did? That leads us to Section 5, the true climate killer and the slow extinction. The decline of the giant terror birds actually kicked off around 10 million years ago. This was long before the land bridge fully formed and long before the saber-tooths ever arrived in force. This wasn't a violent overthrow at all. It was a slow, creeping environmental collapse. Step 1. Over millions of years, the Andes Mountains pushed higher. Step 2. These massive mountains created rain shadows, totally altering weather patterns. Step 3. The lush, wet pampa grasslands that the terror birds relied on began drying out, turning into sparse steppes. Step 4. The traditional prey animals that terror birds had hunted for millions of years either went extinct or were replaced by faster, wildly different herbivores. Step 5. The entire ecosystem collapsed from beneath them. You simply cannot fight a changing climate with a hooked beak. And hey, if you need proof it was the climate and not the invading mammals, look at the Phorusrhacidae, those local four-legged predators we mentioned earlier. They crashed at the exact same time, in the exact same place, for the exact same reasons. Both native predator lineages declined together because the ground was literally drying up under their feet, not because mammals outcompeted them. Section 6, the last terror bird, a final echo. So the giants with the 3-meter stature and massive axe beaks faded away before the Pleistocene really began, but the lineage itself refused to die out entirely. It just got much smaller, 6 kilograms. In 2026, researchers analyzing a misidentified bone in a Brazilian museum realized they were looking at a completely new, late-surviving species of terror bird named Istorus atodora. It weighed just 6 kilograms, roughly the size of a very large chicken. It was still hunting in the Brazilian savanna, just doing it on a much smaller, more marginalized scale. The fossil for this 6-kilogram bird dates back roughly 25,000 years. Think about that. This means the last terror birds and the very first humans arriving in South America existed on the same continent at the exact same time. Picture a human hunter 25,000 years ago walking through the brush and startling this strange, long-legged, hooked-beaked bird. Neither the human nor the bird would have known they were witnessing the quiet, final echo of a dynasty that had ruled the continent for 60 million years. Which brings us to the most unsettling part of this entire explainer. The terror birds survived the dinosaurs. They conquered an entire continent, and they went toe-to-toe with saber-toothed cats. But they were ultimately erased by the slow, quiet drift of a cooling, drying planet. It leaves us with a pretty sobering thought. If tens of millions of years of absolute evolutionary dominance cannot save you from a changing climate, who is next?